good morning. We're going to look at the second part of Isaiah chapter 11. We'd read up to, to verse 9 a couple of days ago. So going from verse 10, "In that day the root of Jesse will stand as a banner for the peoples. The nations will rally to him, and his resting place will be glorious. In that day the Lord will reach out his hand a second time to reclaim the surviving remnant of his people. From Assyria, from Lower Egypt, from Upper Egypt, from Cush, from Elam, from Babylonia, from Hamath, and from the islands of the Mediterranean. He will raise a banner for the nations and gather the exiles of Israel. He will assemble the scattered people of Judah from the four quarters of the earth." So, that's verses 10 to 12. Let's see what's happening there. One, as we said many times, it is the Lord's plans that will be fulfilled. Despite men's worst or best efforts, despite his own people's worst efforts, God's plans will be fulfilled. Here it talks about raising a banner for the peoples, a banner for the nations, and as we go on through Isaiah, we'll see an increasing emphasis on the global reach of the gospel, of God's plans. But here, the emphasis is on Israel. And people from the northern kingdom had been scattered through many nations by Assyria. In a few years hence, the Babylonians would scatter people from Judah, or at least take them to Babylon. And as we know, if we look at the world today, the Jews have been scattered through many nations on the earth. And God talks here of calling them back, reclaiming them. Now, there's all sorts of debate in the church about the role of Israel, with the two extremes being one that essentially Israel can do no wrong. There are some who almost think Israel is saved by a different covenant than the rest of us. Such talk is absolute nonsense. But then there are those who seem to think Israel no longer has any special part in God's plans. And that is equal nonsense. You've got to dump most of the Bible if you want to believe that. If you look at this bit here, God is calling his people from the nations. He's calling the Israelites from the nations where they will have been scattered. So God is going to save his people Israel. He saves the rest of us as well. And we are all saved on the same basis. There is only one basis for salvation, and that is Jesus Christ and the blood of Jesus Christ. And let's see what happens with this. Ephraim's jealousy will vanish and Judah's enemies will be destroyed. Ephraim will not be jealous of Judah, nor Judah hostile towards Ephraim. Ephraim is the northern kingdom. It's variously called Israel, Ephraim, Samaria. And Judah and Ephraim were not the best of friends. But when God's salvation comes, there is unity. And then he talks about how he says he will dry up the gulf of the Egyptian sea with a scorching wind, and he will sweep his hand over the Euphrates. There are references back there to how God brought his people out of Egypt, saying here that something much greater than that will happen. And finishes, there will be a highway for the remnant of his people that is left from Assyria, as there was for Israel when they came up from Egypt. So God is going to save his people Israel.